but this workshop is the effects of mental health and how to live with it. And Deangilo Valentine is going to be doing this workshop in just a minute. Before we start, though, I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement. So OVCO is located in the Oakwood Vaughan community, and the Oakwood Vaughan community is located on the lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We're under the authority of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum, a treaty that bound the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee to share and protect this land. The Europeans and newcomers were invited to live under this treaty, but the colonizers had other ideas. The clearing of the land for settlement saw the ongoing genocide of indigenous peoples, from the Indian agents to the pass system, from residential schools to the underhoused and incarcerated. We, the newcomers, did not honor the Dish with One Spoon. Where other nations honored this relationship with the land, we saw land as property, as resource, as something to be extracted. A lot of OVCO's work is with tenant organizing, and so as tenants, we know how harmful this extraction can be. And so we're here tonight because we believe in a form of community, of sharing, and of peace that's stronger than any colonial state. Thank you. As I've mentioned about OVCO, we're the organization that is hosting this event. We're the Oakwood Vaughan Community Organization. My name's David. I work as a tenant organizer with this organization. We do two main programs, the community plans and working groups, where we try and get community involved in influencing public policy and hosting working groups on different issues that are prevalent in the community. And the Tenant Solidarity Program is what I primarily work under, and that's a program where we try and organize tenants and provide tenants with the means that they need to exercise their rights, stand up for their rights, and even organize for more rights, perhaps. And we can go into that more if anyone has any questions later. There's going to be contact information. So this is the map of where we represent. So if you live within there, we're very happy to work with you and help you in any way possible. And please reach out if you'd like to. And this is how to get in touch. So there's our website, and below is I'm the tenant organizer. So those are my emails if you need to reach me, and the OVCO email more generally if you'd like to get in touch. And lastly, before Deangilo takes us away, we're going to just do a quick statement of inclusion, because OVCO is a community-led organization, and as such, we strive to represent our community with open arms. So we host these workshops and organize in our community because it helps make our community safe by keeping people in their homes and with the support that they need. We want this to begin with us as a safe, welcoming organization. OVCO is welcoming and supportive of everyone, of every person, regardless of their class, creed, race, religion, or sexual/gender identity, and we strive to be a safe space for everyone. And with that, I think it's time for Deangilo to take it away as soon as I make him a host.
All right, perfect.
Cool. Thanks, Deangilo.
All right, so I'm a host now?
You sure are.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to just share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming in today. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, perfect. Today's module workshop is going to be talking about the effects of mental health and how to live with it. And so just a little bit of table of contents to talk, like what I'm talking about today. So few things are: who does mental health affect? What influences it? My personal story with dealing with mental health. What's the difference between mental health and mental illness? How can you manage your mental health? How does therapy work? What happens when you're admitted to the hospital for a mental episode? And what can my friends and family do to help? And then I'll also be sharing some resources. So going into it, who does mental health affect? Who is responsible? So mental health affects everyone. It does not discriminate whoever the person is. So it doesn't matter if you're black, white, gay, straight, binary, whatever, whoever you identify as, everybody deals with mental health in some sort of way. And it also can affect people directly or indirectly. So I'm going to go a little bit more into that. So this chart that you see here kind of explains the ripple effect of how mental health affects everybody on every system. So you have the individual that you see here, and they could be dealing with mental health, and then It could spread to their family, friends, peers, etc. Then they move into something called the Meso System, which you see in the purple. So for example, your child goes into school and acts out and gets in trouble due to mimicking the behavior they've seen in the household. Now you have to go to the school and try to deal with a difficult situation. So it will expand further where you cannot mentally deal with the stress and lash out the child and move into an exposition where the social worker is now called. We can stop along the way or have a proper intervention, but going to your general practitioner, therapist, social group, if not, we enter into the macro healthcare system, or it can get as worse as incarceration. So what influences mental health? So on this chart that you see here, we have the biological, the social, the psychological. So the biological, it could be something like genetics. So if you have a history of mental health in your family, like if people have been diagnosed for like depression or a certain personality syndrome, that can get passed along biologically. There's also diseases, hormones, diet, and exercise that also affects you biologically as well with your mental health. There's drugs, alcohol, where psychologists and psychiatrists, they have something called substance induced psychosis. So what that does is, like, if you're smoking marijuana, I know that smoking marijuana is legal, but there are certain, depending on the potency of the THC that's in that marijuana, it can actually play around with your brain chemistry, and it could mess you up a little bit. So that's just something to be aware of if you're taking drugs or alcohol and stuff like that. Then there's also the social aspect. So your upbringing, your peer relationships, it could be the environment. If you're in an area that is a lower class neighborhood, that may have an effect on your mental health. There's also culture, work, stress, traumas, dealing with discrimination if you're part of a certain type of community, if you're part of the African diaspora, Afro-Caribbean community. We speak a lot about that with a lot of social injustice in oppression. Then there's also the psychological. So it could be certain beliefs that you have about yourself, emotions, resilience. What's very important about resilience, I know that we always talk about, yes, you can fight through, you can do this and that, but really and truly, you're basically stonewalling or making a mask, and you're not properly dealing with the mental health. Then there's emotional intelligence, cognitive biases, and then there's behavior, and then IQ. And all of that basically points right to mental health. So that has a way of affecting your mental health in one way or another. So what is our responsibility? So let's talk about the accountability. So we have a choice when it comes to dealing with our emotional, mental, and physical health. And if you know that you're suffering with your mental health, do something about it, right? Now, if you're a friend, family member, coworker, and you sense that something's wrong, check in on them. And the reason why you should check in on them, because one thing I know about a lot of cases that I've seen of suicide or somebody inflicted self-harm, it's simply because somebody said, oh, well, they seem okay, I don't think that there's anything wrong. But the thing is, take the time to check in on your loved ones, your friends, your coworkers, just in case if something happens, right? Or even before that, because there's a lot more prevention on checking in on them than just to assume something after the fact. So how do I take responsibility? So if you're the individual that's dealing with your mental health, here are 4 steps to figure it out. So one of the things is pay attention to the warning signs. And what I mean by paying attention to the warning signs is, if you notice that your mood has changed in the last couple of days, you feel that the sky is falling down on you, you have dark thoughts, you don't process thing, your cognitive sense of self is not working as the way that you usually know that it is. So those are probably some warning signs that maybe something's happening with you. Next thing is, tell someone whom you trust. So friend, family member, social worker, a medical professional. Tell them the easiest way or the fastest way of you getting help is saying something. Next thing is seeking help. So seeing a psychotherapist, a counselor, a crisis worker, a psychologist, and they can actually help point you in the direction where you can get help or help you themselves because that's their background. And then the next thing and last thing is build a healthy routine and healthy lifestyle. And I'll explain more in a couple of slides from here. So now, how do I take responsibility if you're the friend, family, or coworker? So same 4 steps, but there's a few things that have changed. So pay attention to the warning signs. So if you notice that your friend is having a change of mood, or they're kind of, how can I say it? They're distancing themselves socially from you or the rest of their peers, then that could be a warning sign that something's happening on their end. The next thing is tell someone. So tell your friend, social worker, medical professional, just like if you were the individual. And then there's seeking help. So your HR manager at your workplace, your EAP, crisis worker, nurse, or police. And then instead of build, like I mentioned in the previous slide, you're going to be a support. So what does it mean by being support? Be a safe space to learn and always on ways that you can help. So what should be done? The sooner you recognize it, the better you have a chance of tackling the issue and implementing healthier practices. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. I'm going to try my best not to tear up because it is a lot. Every time that I tell this story, it is very personal. It's almost like I'm reliving it or rehashing it every time, but I'm going to try my best to explain exactly what I went through. So in 2019, my personal mental health took a toll. A lot was happening at the time. I was out of work. It was a struggle to find work. Money wasn't right. My marriage was basically falling apart. And I was so depressed at the point where I did not want to get up in the morning, and I just didn't want to do anything. And it got to the point where I had thoughts of suicide. I even inflicted self-harm on myself. It was so bad that I had to be hospitalized for this, and it happened 4 times, which put a strain on my family because they didn't fully understand what was going on. Especially if you know me personally, I'm a person where I'm always happy. I'm always checking in on you. I'm always like, bubbly, smiling and stuff like that. But there was a huge change in my mood, and close family and friends noticed that. And they were like, something is wrong. Something is not adding up. Something's not making sense. Then next, after the last failed suicide attempt, I was in the care of my mother, where I had to make a decision to get my life together. And I didn't know what the future looked like, but something had to be done. And I had several professional opinions to diagnose what was going on. And they concluded that I had something called borderline personality disorder. So to simply explain what borderline personality disorder is, it's on the spectrum alongside with bipolar, but it's slightly different. So bipolar is where the way that your thought processes or your moods are, it will probably be set for a certain amount of time. So say, for example, I'm happy. I could be happy for 4 days straight, full of energy, accomplishing a lot of stuff. And then all of a sudden in a switch, I will be sad, depressed, angry for another set of 4 days, 5 days, maybe even a week. But with borderline personality disorder, even though it falls under the same spectrum, it can change rapidly, where it can be in seconds, minutes, hours, where that mood can flip. So with the guidance of working healthcare professionals such as clinical psychologists, therapists, and counselors, I would not be where I am today. And I'm grateful that I did not go through with that last attempt, because I wouldn't be giving you this presentation right now. And just to say, for anybody who is listening right now or watching this presentation, if you have thoughts of suicide right now at this moment, get a hold of the crisis. If you're in the city of Toronto, you can call 911 and you can ask for crisis, and they will come to you. So what will happen is it's a police officer that's accompanied with a nurse, and they will come in and check on you first and before taking you to the hospital for psychiatric evaluation. So I know that I've been talking about mental health, but there is a difference between mental health and mental illness. So mental health is something that we talk about a lot. We talk about self-care and all these different things. And we have Bell Let's Talk every year, and people will be texting and talking about, I'm depressed. But the thing is, there's a difference between feeling depressed and being diagnosed with depression. So here's an example. I woke up today feeling great, went to work and came home and my goldfish died. Sad, but in a couple of days, it will feel better. That's mental health. So that's just the feelings, the anxiety, those things that you would feel in the moment. But mental illness is something different. So here's an example. I've been on my medication my whole life for my behaviors that I cannot control. So you can see the difference between the two. Mental illness is something that in some cases you cannot control. It's not always fully understandable by the individual. It can happen at a rapid rate. So this is where we have to put in certain measures for medical professionals, such as medication, certain types of therapy to get them back on track. So let's talk about managing your mental health. Am I going too fast for people? Is everybody getting it? Just give me a thumbs up before I move forward. Everybody's good? All right. All right. So how to manage your mental health. So at my workplace, I am known as a training champion. So I help new hirees be trained for the job before they get on the road. And one of the biggest things I always tell them is to breathe. Take care of number one before you take care of number two. So practice breathing. So with the practice of breathing, it helps you to recollect your thoughts in the moment. And especially for the guys that I train before they hit the road, I always have them mentally prepared. If they get into an accident or if they have a mechanical failure, they need to take the moment to breathe so they can collect their thoughts. So how I do it, I use the method of 4, 7, 8. Breathing in for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7 seconds, exhaling for 8 seconds. So we're going to try this right now. We're going to try this as an exercise. So we're going to breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold it for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to slowly exhale for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How does that feel? All right. Okay. All right. So now, building healthy habits. So one of the biggest things for managing your mental health is building healthier habits and healthier lifestyles. So number one is physical fitness. So going to the gym, going out for a walk, doing something that's very physical to get your whole body moving. And one of the biggest things that we talked about before with the biological part of the body is that when you're working out, when you're exercising, your body produces endorphins, and that endorphins helps with the rest of your body, not only just for you to be physically healthy, but mentally healthy as well. Then there's healthier eating habits. Now, I know with the whole pandemic and COVID and people being locked up in their homes and stuff like that, some of us have not taken the time to eat properly and eat healthier. But eating fried foods like Popeyes, having McDonald's, Burger King, any fast food restaurant, that takes an impact on your health. So there's the biological component that's there. All those foods don't nourish the body. So how do you expect it to nourish your brain? Next thing is daily exposure to daylight. So those who are melanated, daylight, exposure to daylight, exposure to sunlight is a very big thing, especially for vitamin D. So you need to have that. And then next thing is getting a regular physical from your doctor every month. Always make sure you get a checkup. Always make sure you get a checkup. You could prevent a disease, you can prevent cancer, all these different things. And that also has an effect on your mood as well. And then last one, set time to go out of town once a month, like a day trip. So if you're in the Toronto area, if you do not have a vehicle, you can get on a Go bus, you can get on the Mega bus, you could go out to Niagara, or if you're in town, go to a free festival. And especially now things are opening up, you can go to Rib Fest, Caravana, Jerk Fest, you can go to Busker Fest. There is Summerlicious that's happening. Go out in the city, explore, go outside of your neighborhood to kind of refresh your mind. So now building healthy relationships, and relationships are very key for your mental health. So spending time with friends and family more. And I know since the whole pandemic and all these lockdowns, we've been spending a lot more time with our loved ones, to the point where it's like, it irks you sometimes. But spending time with friends and family more, and especially if they're affectionate, that helps so much more. Then you have join an activity group of interest. So if you're into basketball, football, any kind of sports, if like for myself, I'm into race cars. If you're into knitting, if you're into like doing puzzles or playing cards or playing chess, join an activity group. Then the next one is get active with a religious group. So i.e. church, mosque, or temple. And I don't know if anybody is like a atheist, non-believer, agnostic, or anything like that, but it has a tremendous impact when you're part of a religious group, because when you share a common belief, you have a common goal, you do things together, you impact your community, and it helps so much for everybody else, not just yourself. The next thing is going to networking events. Going to networking events is great to meet new people. If you're a person who is starting a business, you never know. You might be finding your next investor. You might be finding your next business partner. And if those who are single in the group, you might be finding your next spouse. So going to network events is great to just get yourself out there and just experience and meet new people. And then go out more to restaurants, shows, games, do something that's completely out of the norm. Perfect example to that, I went to the Marlies game a couple of weeks ago. I'm not into hockey, but I was like, you know what? I got free tickets to go. I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun. I went with my cousin and we had a blast. So this is what not to do. So substance abuse. So if you find yourself in a position to drink, do drugs when you're depressed, it makes things worse. So remember, I was talking about that body chemistry, that brain chemistry. You do not want to be taking drugs or drinking. And if you're at home and you feel like doing that just to cope with your depression, I would say throw that out immediately. Get rid of those bottles right now. If you're an addict or you feel that you're going to become an addict, get rid of it immediately. Next thing is hanging around with friends or family who do not have your best interests at heart. So if that family member is not uplifting you, that family member has a very jaded view of the world, those are people that you do not want to be around, just because that has a tremendous impact on your mental health. Next thing is watching movies or TV shows that have negative themes. So if they have violence, acts of unconsensual sex or sexual violence, all those kind of things have an impact to your mental health. And here's something that happens to your subconscious. Basically, one thing could happen where you're watching it and it basically desensitizes you, or you react in a certain way as if it's real, because your brain is perceiving it as real. Next thing is inflicting self-harm. So that's a very big one. If you're in a spot where you feel that you're going to inflict self-harm, call crisis immediately. Taking out your frustration on others, verbal or physical. That I've seen that happen one too many times. There's also one here where I talk about internet trolling or sadism. And basically what sadism is, it's a form of mental illness where a person gets a rise at picking on other people on the internet, because on the internet, you can be the big bad wolf and nobody can track you down or see you. and you basically will put a post or a comment to get a rise out of people, and you have this dopamine rush and et cetera, et cetera. So you want to avoid of doing that. Then there's emotional spending, where you feel that there's a void that has to be filled, where you could be walking the mall, walking the grocery store, even shopping online, where you feel that I got to buy something because I feel much better about myself when I have it. Then there's listening to music that is negative or has no upliftment. So for me, I love hip hop, but the thing is, there's certain artists in hip hop music I cannot listen to, simply because I'm like, no, that just does not work for me. That does not represent me. So I completely cut that out. Then there's a toxic work environment. So it could be the people in that environment or the physical environment that it is. So what I mean by the physical environment, you could be working with chemicals, you could be working with something that has mold, asbestos, those have tremendous impacts on your health as well. And for me, I'm a part of the joint health and safety committee at my workplace, and we always let employees know about their rights. They have 3 rights. The right to know. So you have the right to know what hazards are in your workplace. You have the right to participate. So if you see something that's unsafe, you have the right to participate, to have those changes made, and then you have the right to refuse. So always remember, if your employer asks you to do something that you're not trained for, or you're not comfortable for, or it seems dangerous, it looks dangerous, you have the right to refuse it. And then eating disorders. So there's emotional eating, eating out of control. There's refusing to eat for those who are anorexic or bulimic. Then there's eating food that does not benefit your health, which I mentioned before. You want to stay away from the fried foods. You want to stay away from the junk food or any food that just does not have any nutrients in it. So let's talk about therapy and treating your mental health. So how can I treat my mental health? So here's the medical advice. So mental health, there's a Swiss Army knife, and one is practicing healthy habits, which I explained before in the last few slides. Then there's mindfulness. So having that consciousness to know that, okay, I'm being triggered right now. This is what's bothering me. Then you take the steps to properly deal with it. I mentioned about breathing. Then there's taking prescribed medication. And I know there's a lot of taboo that's surrounded around that, simply because depending on your social circle, there's always the humor or the taboo around it that, oh, somebody's taking medication for their mental illness or their mental health. And it's like, oh, I don't want to hang around with them. But if the doctor prescribes it, just take it. And I'm just letting you guys know that are watching right now or listening right now, do not feel ashamed that if you have to take medication for the treatment for your mental health or your mental illness. And then the next thing is therapy. So therapy, you notice that therapy and counseling are on 2 different bullet points. They're actually not the same. So for therapy is usually done by somebody who is a psychotherapist, somebody who is a psychologist, psychiatrist. Usually that therapy is recommended by a medical professional before proceeding ahead. And then there's counseling. So counseling is usually done by somebody who is appointed to do counsel for you. So that could be a clergy minister, a coach, all that stuff like that. They can do counseling, but they cannot do therapy. Therapy is only for people who are registered therapists, psychotherapists, psychologists, or psychiatrists. So how does therapy work? So therapy is one of the tools in the Swiss Army knife in getting on track with your mental health. There are many types of therapy that you can do. Some therapy types are recommended by health professionals because of a diagnosis. And here are some examples. So for me, what I've done is cognitive behavioral therapy. So it helps you think and understand triggers. Usually the therapist will ask you a certain set of questions, trace your thought pattern. There's also dialectical behavior therapy. That's another one that's recommended for those who are treating a mental illness. Then there's EMDR, or eye movement desensitization reprogramming. So this is where you're going to be sitting with a psychotherapist, and basically they have a light bar, and the light basically moves on stages on that bar, and they're watching your eyes, and then they'll ask you questions, see if they can open you up, understand your trigger patterns, et cetera. And then you have cognitive processing therapy, where this is more of a behavior-based, they'll look at how you process certain situations, they'll test you on a few things, et cetera. So therapy is not the way that you would see it on a TV show or see it in a movie or anything like that, where a person sitting down and just basically venting and venting and venting. Those that are in that professional field are looking at ways to help you to think for yourself, to get better for yourself and understand triggers. It's not something where you're trying to pull something from your past and your childhood and et cetera, like they show in the movies. This is some serious work. So now, what happens if I'm admitted to the hospital? So if you're at the hospital due to a mental episode, you may be held there for psychiatric evaluation under the Mental Health Act. I'm not going to go too deep in it because there's several sections of it that pertain to different things, but I'm going to just give you the quick summary. So you can voluntarily check yourself into the hospital or be brought in by the police. And depending on the severity of the crisis, the first assessment from a psychiatrist, you may be required under the Mental Health Act to stay in the hospital at the very minimum 72 hours. And you may stay longer for further evaluation. Depending on your behavior, you may be required to take medication upon request from the doctor on staff. So when I was in the hospital and I was treating it, they actually extended a few days just to kind of see how my mood and my behavior was before releasing me. So closer to the time of being discharged from the hospital, a social worker or nurse will discuss a plan to get back on track. And then the psychiatrist that made the initial assessment when you were admitted, they will let you or your family know what is recommended for outpatient care, such as therapy and other medications. And usually at this time, they will have a sheet of different resources, outpatient care, for different types of therapy, depending on your diagnosis of what you can do to help yourself get back on track. So now for my loved ones, for family and friends, what can you do to help? So what can you do to help? Be a safe space for that person. That's number one. Listen to understand. That's 2. 3, do the research for their condition and have more understanding. 4, find a support group. So find a support group, not for them, but for yourself, because you're that loved one and you may feel that somebody doesn't really understand. Find a support group of people who understand what you're going through because they're going through something similar. And then the next thing is take care of your personal mental health. And I know for myself, I put a lot of strain on my loved ones because I was going through that. Make sure you take care of yourself as well. So just like the healthy habits I showed you, do that as well to take care of yourself. And now, what does it mean to listen to understand? What it requires you to do is listen without making judgment, listen without reacting or interjecting, ask questions to shift your point of view. So kind of get more of a grasp of understanding of what's going on in their brain. And then the only time when you need to interject is when the person has thoughts of harming themselves or harming someone else. So therapists actually say the same exact thing. If there is a moment where the patient has to vent, but they always give this disclaimer before they move forward, always check to see if they have thoughts of harming themselves or harming someone else. So we can talk about mental health services. And so for those who are watching, listening right now, you're probably wondering if you're in a financial bind, because some of us may be, and I completely understand. Sometimes therapy is expensive. Or it may seem expensive. But if you work at a job where you have benefits, you can actually talk to your HR manager and see if your benefits can cover all or a portion of the therapy sessions that you need or for your family member. Also, we have free resources as well. I'm going to show one in the next coming slides as well. But there are places where you can get free therapy. But the only challenge to that is they'll give you 3 free sessions, and then the rest is a paid per session, paid at cost. And then there's also other complementary therapies that are provided through other services like the University Health Network here in Toronto, and also CAMH. So for those who are in the Toronto area, you can visit CAMH at 250 College Street. So that is that's College and Spadina. That's the main campus there. If you want to get information, you can go there. You can also get treatment there. There's also different types of outpatient care there and therapy services. So you can ask them what's available, what's affordable, what I can do. And then if you're in the Ottawa area, there is the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Center at 1145 Carling Avenue. So if you're in the Ottawa area and if you're coming from the West End, coming the west from Carling, you're going to pass the Travel Lodge Hotel. And then right next to it, or a few doors down, is the Royal Ottawa. And then for those who are part of the African diaspora, Black Canadian community, Afro-Caribbean community, Unifund also has a resources for Black Canadians for mental health. And then, like I mentioned, there is free mental health therapy for Ontario residents at Mind Beacon that you see here. And I'll make sure that those get distributed amongst the in the chat there. And then if you are dealing with suicide or have thoughts of suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Line. So this is the line for the US, and here's one for Canada that you see here. Call 911 or bring yourself to the nearest hospital. So if you're in Toronto, every hospital has a mental ward. So all you have to do is just go to the emerge, tell them what's going on. They'll deal with you appropriately, and they'll do the evaluation and then to see if you need to be admitted or not under the Mental Health Act. So like I said, mental health, mental illness is a very serious thing. I take it very, very serious. And with the information that you have taken from this presentation here, I hope that you can use it and further on and build a healthier life. Thank you so much. All right. Everybody still there?
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
No problem.
I think my only comment is, I know that some people joined late after you told your story.
Yes.
I don't know if everybody would mind hearing your story again, because I think it's so remarkable, and congratulations in your journey.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I can definitely, okay with, yeah,
I can definitely do that again. I'm going to just pull up the screen and share it. Give me 1 second. All right, so my story. So for those who came in a little bit late, just to kind of reiterate again, in 2019, I had a very serious issue with my mental health. It took a toll on me. I was depressed. I was going through a lot. I wasn't working. There was a rough patch in my marriage. Things were not all as succinct as it would be. And I was so depressed at the point where I didn't want to get up and go to work. And it got to the point where I had thoughts of suicide. And it was so bad that I was hospitalized for this. And it happened 4 times, which it put a strain on my family because they didn't fully understand what was going on. And anybody that knows me personally, they know me. I'm a very joyous type of person. I'm always smiling. I'm loud, et cetera, et cetera. So it just kind of seemed strange that there was a huge change in my mood. So after the last failed attempt, I was in the care of my mom. which I had to make the decision to get my life together. And I didn't know what the future looked like, but something had to be done. And I had several professional opinions to diagnose what was going on, and they concluded that I had borderline personality disorder. So to explain what borderline personality disorder is, so it's in the spectrum of bipolar. So what bipolar is you may have a change in moods, but it's a spread of a certain amount of time. So say, for example, I'm happy. So I'll be happy for 4 days straight, full of energy, getting things done, et cetera, et cetera. And then it could switch. And then the next 4, 5, 6 days, I could be depressed, angry, moody, et cetera, et cetera. But what borderline personality disorder is, that mood can change rapidly, very frequently, in seconds, minutes, hours, where I could be happy, sad, up, down, like my mood just changes very frequently. So with the guidance of working healthcare professionals such as clinical psychologists, therapists, and counselors, I would not be where I am today. So I'm glad that that final suicide attempt never went through, because I would not be telling you this story or sharing this or giving you this kind of information so that you can do something for yourself. All right. So is there any questions for anybody that's on the stream right now?
Is there any way for the, sorry, tripping over my own words for a second. Do you have like links to the resources that you shared?
Yep, I'm going to send them right now via the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Moment. Yeah, no problem. I'm very grateful to do this and have this opportunity to share it, because I firmly believe that in regards to how things may seem right now for you, there's always hope that there's better yet to come, right? And the thing is, how the way that I live my life with purpose. I don't live it where I'm just living for myself, because I know for a fact, and the thing is, I'm professing my faith right now. I am a firm believer in Jesus Christ, and for those who are probably hearing this and you're wondering why am I testifying like this, but I know that after my last attempt, I knew that when things didn't work out, I knew that my life had a greater purpose. So, anybody who's watching and listening out there, this is why it's very important to have a strong faith, because one thing I can say, if I didn't have it, I probably wouldn't be here. So I'm going to just share a few. One second. I'm going to share. I already shared the CAMH and the Royal Ottawa. I am going to share. Okay. Mindfulness. Command C. There's the next one there. And I have one more. So that's part of the University Health Network, and they have different resources there. That's a PDF that I'm going to be sharing. And that's everything. All righty.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing those.
No problem. Thank you so much. And thank you again for this opportunity. Okay. Elijah Marie, I see that you have your hand up.
I don't know if you can answer this, but what was it like for your parents, your loved one, during this time, in terms of them? Like, how did they cope? I don't know if you have any insight to that.
Yeah, I definitely have an
share.
insight to that. Also, my mom is watching the stream right now too.
Oh.
I know it was a lot for her, but I know she was a praying mom. I know day after day she was praying, and she was convinced that there was going to be a breakthrough somewhere. she knew that there was going to be a breakthrough, and it was a lot. It was a lot of strain for her, a lot of strain for my brother, a lot of strain for my stepfather as well. But they took it upon themselves to just be close and just remind me that, like, hey, you have a support here. We care about you very, very much. And that's one of the biggest things. It's like, yes, if you have a family member or a friend, it's a lot. It will test you as well. And that's why I said, take care of your personal mental health as well. Take that time of mindfulness, take that time to breathe, and do those healthy practices for yourself. Because the thing is, the indirect effect becomes a direct effect to you if you don't do something about it for yourself. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else here have any more questions?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
If anyone doesn't have a question, then I could ask a question. I think
Go
one
ahead.
of the questions that I'm seeing is that why is mental health and, let's say, cancer, in terms of the biases, right? I think what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that why is it all illnesses not treated equally? Whereas if someone is diagnosed with a mental health, it's like they're in a completely different category in terms of they don't even exist, you know? And maybe
Absolutely.
you could give us some insight on that, because I'm
Absolutely.
trying to understand that.
No worries. That's a very good question. The reason why that we have that issue, because it's still seen as taboo, right? Culturally in society, it's still seen as taboo, and they think that, oh well, this person has really lost it, and then that we just chuck them to the corner. But really and truly, it's like you're chucking them to the corner when it could be something that's biologically happening to the brain and causing them to be confused. But this is why we have to do stuff like this, and to build more awareness and also invest in these kind of services, because the sooner we tackle issues like this, the better that it can be recognized and treated. And also the other thing as well is that, especially in mental wards, a lot of the stuff is experimental. So if they're putting you on medication, it's not a medication that's specific to treating that specific illness. It's one that covers a certain type of brain chemistry, and they'll give it to you to see what happens. Does it change your mood? Does it slow things down, et cetera, et cetera? So it's hard to kind of put a pin where things are. It's like, okay, somebody's who's clinically depressed, like diagnosis clinically depressed, we don't have a exact pill that does that, or we don't have a surgery that does that, because we're still trying to figure out how does that, what's going on with this person, what's going on with their brain chemistry, what's going on with their mood and the feelings, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's always a lot of play and a lot of analysis that's going on. And then also on top of it too, it really depends on the state of that person, and if they're in a state where they're okay to actually put the work in and get help. Because I've seen personally, when I was in there are some people that are so, like, I don't like to say the word far gone, but where it's like they cannot conscientiously think or contain the reality of what's happening right now. So it's not easy. But the thing is, what we're doing on this end is to help shed light on how can we do something about it.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for you.
Yep.
Could you explain to us what medication fitness is like, and how sometimes it's like a hit and miss in terms of medication?
So for medication, yes, it sometimes could be a hit and miss, because it depends on the strength and potency of that medication. And I know in the hospital, what they do is they'll prescribe a medication that is in relevance or in that spectrum of the illness that they assessed. And then they will also give you a pill to help you sleep. So it, like in my experience of using the medication, sometimes I had a reaction to it. I'm grateful that my mom is a nurse. So she, when I was doing my outpatient stuff, as soon as I got out, she's like, no, I don't want you to take that medication. So what she told our general practitioner, I remember it was Pristic and Trazodone were the two medications that they had me on. And the dosage was a little bit lighter than what they would use in the hospital, just to see, like, my mom wanted to see like how I was going to react to it. Was my mood going to change or anything like that? Eventually now I'm at the point where I'm basically med free. I've been med free for 3 years, but for some people you may be on those meds for almost your entire lifetime. But if you're getting to a point where you're getting a little bit better, you can talk to your general practitioner to smaller, that have a not as potent dosage, so you can slowly wean yourself off of it. And like I mentioned too, there's also the chemistry of the brain. So like there's the combination of foods. Are you drinking, smoking, etc., and stuff like that? That can also affect with the medication, and also the environment that you're in. If you're breathing in certain toxins that are in the air, like especially if you live in a place that's moldy, that can also affect it as well. All right. I have 2 more minutes in this location before they kick me out. But anybody else that has any more questions? Nobody? All right, Dave, I can pass the floor back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Deangelo. Really appreciated the workshop, and thanks to everyone who came out. I think we should probably end it here soon, just because I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, especially yours, given that you're about to get kicked out of the location you're currently presenting from. So yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. Hope to see you in some of our future workshops.